Hi, welcome to Highland Cottage Books. I'm Martha, and this is Highland Cottage, and today I'm going to talk to you about books by 7 contemporary British authors who also happen to be among the writers featured at this year's Literature Festival at Sea. So whether you plan to attend or you're just interested in getting some recommendations for some great new things to read, I made coffee and tea, and I also snagged some fancy hot chocolate from Sir Samuel's. So grab yourself a cup, have a seat on the couch, and let's talk books. So the Literature Festival at Sea does exactly what it says on the tin. It is a week-long event full of seminars, readings, workshops, and signings featuring authors, historians, and journalists. What makes it unusual is that instead of being at a bookstore or at a convention center, it is actually held aboard the Queen Mary 2 while it's on a transatlantic voyage from New York to Southampton. If this sounds interesting to you, you should know that as of the time of me recording this, there are a few tickets left for the December 8th through 15th voyage. I am in no way affiliated with or sponsored by Cunard or the Cheltenham Times and Sunday Times Literature Festival. I've left a link in the description if you want to check it out. Before I start, I wanted to say that I chose the authors and the books that I'm covering today based on the very scientific method of what looks fun that was available on eBay and at my library. Once I get on board, I will learn about the other authors and I'll check out their work, and I will probably do a follow-up. Eeny, Meeny is a fast-paced thriller with plenty of twists and turns. Someone is kidnapping people in pairs and taking them to a remote location without food or water, and then forcing them to make an impossible choice. Among the victims are a couple, co-workers, and a mother and a child, and they are from all walks of life. But over time, it becomes apparent that they are not being chosen at random, and they have something very specific in common. This book is best if you're in the mood for something dark and gritty, but I warn you, clear your schedule because you're not going to want to put it down. Mayflies is an incredible novel that starts off joyous, but then takes quite a turn at about the halfway mark. The first half focuses on a group of Scottish young men who are making the pilgrimage to Manchester in 1986 to go see the 10th GMEX Music Festival. Among the bands featured are the Smiths, New Order, and The Fall. And O'Hagan absolutely captures that feeling of going on an adventure with your friends to be part of something, this moment that is bigger than yourselves. For the good people of Manchester, it is just another day in their fair city, but for these guys, it is the apogee of culture, rebellion, and youth. These chapters had me laughing and getting me all riled up and making me feel nostalgic and all the things at once. But then we catch up with our friends a few decades later and things have gotten a lot more serious. I would highly recommend listening to this book on audiobook. It is read by O'Hagan himself, and he has a great voice and a great deal of charisma. The Last Word is a clever mystery featuring a trio of unlikely but very effective detectives. There's an 84-year-old man who's retired from the BBC, a former monk who runs a coffee stand, and his partner, a Ukrainian woman who owns a care agency, but who is also a private investigator. They've been tasked with looking into the death of a famous mystery author by her daughters, who suspect the writer's rather younger husband. What they discover is that there are a series of deaths that are linked to a writer's retreat, and they decide to go undercover to check it out. The mystery and the plot is very compelling, but what I loved most about the story was getting to know these three characters. All of them are quirky and delightful and complex. On the cozy to dark scale, this is more cozy, but it is not without drama. In Murder Before Evensong, Canon Daniel Clement upsets his flock by announcing plans for installing a lavatory in his historic church. What starts as a sort of village battle of wills turns deadly as secrets are uncovered. In a lot of ways, this reminded me of a Miss Marple mystery in that people underestimated her because she was an older woman from a small village. And you could underestimate Daniel because he's a man of the cloth and may seem separated from the nitty-gritty of everyday life. But as it turns out, both of them are keen observers of human nature. And don't let the whimsical illustration on the cover lull you into a sense of safety. While this is on the cozier side of mysteries, it's not American Psycho. It is not super cozy. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that the author, the Reverend Richard Coles, was, in the 1980s, one half of the famous pop duo the Communards, which had a string of hits, including Don't Leave Me This Way and Never Can Say Goodbye. After the Communards disbanded, Coles studied theology and was ordained in the Church of England. And if that didn't make him cool enough, his partner was in my second favorite Doctor Who episode ever, Blink. My favorite episode is The Husbands of River Song, not that you asked, but I digress. I really love this book, and I will probably read the sequels while I am on board the Queen Mary 2 with a cup of tea in hand. If you ever studied English history or literature, then you have probably come across the name Samuel Pepys. He was a prolific diarist, and his journals serve as primary sources for many big events that happened during the 17th century. This historical thriller comes up with an alternative reason for why he stopped writing his diaries. In the book, Pepys is tasked with checking out a possible case of corruption in the Royal Navy. The last man who was sent to investigate the shady dealings was found murdered in a gruesome way. While he's in Portsmouth, he uncovers evidence of several different conspiracies. The story itself is great, but what I personally am going to most remember about this book is an absolutely squicky and harrowing description of a real-life surgery that Pepys had to have. The timing is a little bit fudged, but Pepys had to go, in real life, he had to go through this horrific ordeal. I remember I was listening to it at the time. I often listen to things and read things, depending on if I'm in my car or if I'm on the couch. I'll kind of consume my books in tandem, but I can tell you where I was exactly, geographically speaking, when they described what the doctor had to do to him. I don't even have the same parts that he has, and I was like, ah! But other than that, or in addition to that, this book is filled with plenty of great and chewy political intrigue and interpersonal dynamics. Simon Armitage is the current poet laureate, and he is known for his original works and his adaptation of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. I do read and enjoy poetry, but I haven't studied it at all on any formal level in about 30 years, and I don't feel like I can add anything on this platform. So instead, what I'm going to do is talk about his memoir, Walking Home. One summer, he decided to walk the Pennine Way, which is an arduous trail that runs north-south or south-north in Great Britain. And as the title suggests, his hometown happens to be on one end of it. On his journey, he was a troubadour poet, relying on the largesse of the audiences that would come to see his nightly readings for food, lodging, and money. I can't say that a lot happens in this book, but that is absolutely not the point. Armitage has a way with words, and he takes little moments and turns them into incredible tales that transcend the usual travel anecdotes. He's also very witty and whimsical without being precious. In between many history lessons and heartfelt reflection, there are also little bits of poetry that he has penned along the way. I personally love the rhythm of his poetry. A lot of it is very propulsive, and not necessarily in this book, but I also appreciate the fact that a lot of his poems are narrative in nature. and I love a good story. And finally, one of the things that I really love about going to literary festivals is that I end up discovering incredible books that I would have never picked up on my own. Shades of Grey by Jasper Fforde is a little bit of everything and is a glorious gumbo of awesome. It's a social satire and dystopian speculative fiction that will have you laughing out loud and planning a revolution. In it, our hero, such as he is, Eddie Russet, lives in a future where his entire place in society and his merit as a human being is based entirely on how much color he can perceive on the spectrum. There are some people like Eddie who see gray and then some shades of red. There are others who see everything as gray and some shades of yellow, and it goes all the way up until the ultraviolets. There are also a large group of people, the Greys, who don't see any color at all, and they are on the lowest rung of the ladder. Eddie's world is full of rules and nuance, and I don't want to go into any of it because the world building here is top notch, and one of the joys of the book is discovering all the things that are happening around him. Did I mention this book is hilarious? Because it's hilarious. And the humor isn't just dry, it's arid. But at the same time, it has a lot to say about a lot of things and has an incredible amount of depth and warmth as well. Imagine that Jane Austen, Brave New World, and A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy had a very, very British baby, and that would be Shades of Grey. I can't tell you how much I love this book, and I am saving up its sequel, Red Side Story, for the trip. So that's it. 7 recommended books by authors that are featured in this year's Literature Festival at Sea. If you are going to be on board and you do see me, come up to me and say hi. I would love to chat books. But either way, thanks for hanging out with me today. Bye!